probably never heard of the Chiodo Brothers, you have almost certainly seen their stop-motion work on The Simpsons. If you haven't already seen their animation, puppets and effects, then they're almost 40 years in the film industry. However, they're almost certainly best known for their horror comedy cult classic that gives the Red Scare-fueled alien invasion horror of the 1950s a comically circusly twist. Hello and welcome to Enchanted Essays. Today I'm reviewing the 1988 film Killer Klowns from Outer Space. Before we start, let me know if you've seen this in the comments. A horny young couple are making out in their car when they decide to follow a falling star. What they end up finding turns out to be far more dangerous than a meteorite, as the big top they find there turns out to be a spaceship owned by killer clowns from outer space. As the clowns terrorise the town, killing its residents in increasingly ridiculous ways, it's up for the youngsters to try and take down this intergalactic menace. This film is fantastic. This film is a horror comedy, specifically one riffing on the sci-fi horror B-movie conventions of the 1950s. It's played straight by the actors, which really does help sell the comedy in sometimes even brief moments of genuine suspense in the film. The standout human character is undoubtedly John Vernon as the disgruntled, cynical police chief who is convinced this is all a ruse. There's a bit of a subplot with the girl needing help from her ex-boyfriend and some additional comic relief in the form of the brothers in the ice cream van. But the main focus is the clown's antics rather than intricacies of the plot and characters, and that's fine by me. The clowns themselves are the real stars of the show. This is in no small part due to the convincing special effects, the menacingly comic performances of those inside the suits, and the many inventive ways the theme of clowns in the circus is incorporated into their technology and kills. There are scenes carried entirely by their physical comedy, and the costume and set design is a visual feast. When you compare it to the other two major comedy horrors films of the decade, Ghostbusters and Beetlejuice, it doesn't actually fall that far behind in terms of quality, despite its noticeably smaller budget. The film has, hands down, one of my favourite movie theme songs of all time. The title song by the Dickies is a great 80s punk tune that incorporates traditional circus melodies into a catchy guitar riff. Much like the film, that's a lot of fun. The rest of the soundtrack is great too, often accentuating the suspense of certain moments and drawing out the ironic humour by contrasting it with the ridiculous antics on screen. In conclusion, Killer Klowns from Outer Space is a fun comedy horror romp and is especially enjoyable for those who love the 80s. I recommend having a movie night with some friends and a few beers, some candy floss, some popcorn and ordering some pizza. I wouldn't recommend it to those who are particularly squeamish, but if you're somewhere in the middle, the gore is very mild and the violence is very comedic. If you want a comedy horror film that leans more on the comedy than the horror, this is the film for you. Probably best to avoid if you have a fear of clowns though. I pretty much never play video games unless they're to convince me to learn Spanish or exercise, but I'm really interested in the Killer Klowns from Outer Space video game that was announced a few months ago. The trailer has me so hyped. It should be good if it's half as creative as the film. I also hope that the sequels that have been in development hell since the original's release see the light of day, especially now that Universal's eagerness to add more 80s horror IPs into their Halloween Horror Nights over the past few years seems to have helped stoke the revived interest in the original film. If you want to watch me discuss another retro horror film suitable for the faint of heart, you can watch my review of Whoever Slew Auntie Roo here. See you soon!
You're pretty tough with a gun in your hand. You're pretty tough with a fist in your hand.